Let's talk about interceding. Let's talk about bargaining. And it is something that I've seen. It brings up questions to me, in particular when it comes to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm pretty sure most of you have either heard of this or know about it. In many communities, even those that are not religious, they've heard about this. Because it's a very important kind of story that shows how wickedness, how excession, and how rampant, exaggerated levels of what's the word lust or greed can affect people, can affect a city, and in this case, an entire group of people, a town, as per the Bible. The story basically goes like this: God destroys a city that is filled with wickedness, filled with people participating in all types of idolization of all types of gods. Um, People who are typically studying this will say, well, that idolatry could have been in terms of money. It could have been in terms of other type of pagan gods. It could have been sexual acts. Could have been murder and all types of other words. Is not appropriate right now, but you get the idea. So God destroys those cities for their wickedness. In terms of God and what we might see God to be, the reference that I'm going to use is the collective consciousness idea of God, or that God being some greater part of the universe. In other words, when you have an entire group of people, whether it be in a small group or in a large group, participating in self destructive acts, what happens is that you destroy yourself, either in the short run or in the long run. In the Bible, it was pretty much instantly leveled, destroyed. It's interesting though, and this is what I want to bring up, is the intercession, the bargaining. In the Bible, it says, well, if there are 50 people that are good, do we still destroy them? And God says, well, if there's 50 people, no, I will not. He goes on, what if there's 45? Answer remains the same. If there is 40, 35, 30, you get the idea. It is this bargaining that I see that happened before the destruction of those cities. And I wonder if this is something that we do within ourselves. And if this is something that people do when they're either excusing other people's behavior or excusing the behavior or actions of certain groups. We bargain. We refuse to see the truth that is right in front of us. We think, well, even if that group does all of the stuff that is well known, if there is just a few people that are good in there, then that sort of removes the burden, removes the cost, so to speak, of the responsibility that people need to share when tolerating something or when accepting something that they see. It is known, and in fact, I would say well known, about, this quote. How does it go again? The only thing that evil needs to triumph is for good men to do nothing. I think the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, especially in its inception, or its beginning, where it talks about this bargaining, shows a point on that. And I want to argue the reverse, as to instead of doing this bargaining, we see something for what it is, and we realize that it is evil, and we realize that although we may not have a immediate responsibility towards it, we are in some point complicit to their actions. It is also of note to understand that perhaps, at least for this story, that God may not have wanted to destroy them. Maybe that the Lord knew that they would destroy themselves ultimately anyways. We need to look within ourselves to see what it is that we should tolerate, what it is that we do that destroys ourselves, and how we're going to act accordingly towards all these things. What is the appropriate action? Do we just destroy it in the same way that is shown in the Bible? Lots of people throughout history have justified all types of atrocities based off of how they either disagree or they notice something that they believe are atrocities. But if in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, the atrocities were idol worship, sexual acts, was it necessary for it to be destroyed in the way that it was? If thieving, murder, and that sort of thing is self destructive to begin with, what is the punishment for that? And what happens to the good people that live within those communities? Are they responsible for staying there? You can see this in the modern day, where people live in communities, they live in cities throughout the United States, Canada, Europe, many countries within Europe, South America, the islands. People live in communities. They know everything that's going wrong, and they don't really necessarily do anything about it. Not that it is their fault, sometimes they have no choice. They're not powerful enough. They don't have enough numbers. In this regard, I propose that we act within ourselves and remove ourselves. Live by example. Show others by example. Who knows when any place can be destroyed? It does not necessarily have to be God. Given the situation of the world right now, we know that, war can break out. We know that all types of climate change disasters could happen if you believe in that sort of thing. And even if you didn't, natural disasters happen regularly for all types of places. Some places could be tornadoes, others typhoons, hurricanes, earthquakes. All these things have always been blamed, or at least replaced with the idea that it is God's doing. A place that is wicked gets destroyed by earthquake or hurricane, and they say, well, those people had it coming. They were wicked, they were evil. There was something like that was bound to happen. But what does that say about the other places that were not filled with wickedness, that are just as well destroyed? Do we know for a fact that God destroys wicked places? As we can imagine, how many places today would be destroyed if God was to destroy wicked places? Do we still see these things today? Are we still aware that these things happen without the cause of natural disasters, or that man himself either is responsible for it? If we were to destroy ourselves based off of our wickedness, and this is a regular thing, what does that say for wickedness in of itself? Once again, in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, God destroys a city based off of his wickedness. But if we were to bargain with God, not necessarily in the biblical sense, but bargain with ourselves, or not be tolerant of our own wickedness and see it from a greater perspective of the universe, that we know that we have the power to make sure that we do not destroy ourselves, and that we live in a way that we can bring to the next generation and see how far we can get into the future.